I've told you who I think is the group of five representative in the college football playoff. I told you and predicted who I think wins the Power Four conferences. And now I think it's time to tell you what my college football playoff bracket looks like. And before we get into the predictions, I think it's important to note that if you look back at last year's college football playoff bracket, nobody predicted Arizona State, Indiana, SMU would be in the field. Nobody thought Boise State was going to be a 3 seed. These were like completely ridiculous, crazy ideas to even ponder for half a second, let alone to even come to fruition. And so I think that's always important, especially like when you go to fill out a March Madness bracket and everybody's like, really, you got so-and-so going to the Final Four? Well, who had George Mason, VCU? Who had Florida Gulf Coast winning 2 games? You know, like these things happen. And so I think it is crazy and ridiculous to try to predict those things to happen. But just saying the favorites to win every conference and then saying, hey, the teams that are picked to finish in the top 3 in the SEC, they're going to make the college football playoff. So I went a little off the reservation a little bit. So without further ado, here is what I think the college football playoff bracket looks like when they make their selections in early December. I think that Texas is the number 1 overall seed. I told you that I think Texas, Iowa State, Ohio State, and Clemson win their respective conferences. I have Texas as the number 1 seed and Clemson as the number 2 seed. I think there's a decent chance Texas is either undefeated or a 1-loss team, and I think there's a really decent chance that Clemson is the same. So while the ACC is not going to get the benefit of the doubt and is not going to get a second team in my opinion, I still think Clemson, whether 12-1 or 13-0, is viewed as so good that they are in the top 2 and get a bye. Texas on the left-hand side of the bracket as the number 1 seed, in my view, will play the winner of Oregon and Texas A&M. I am putting my faith in the Aggies. Should I do that? No. It already feels like a bad decision. But I think Mike Elko has a special thing brewing, and they have good enough quarterback play in Marcel Reed. The defense should be pretty good. And the schedule, not all that difficult, to tell you the truth about the Aggies. If you look at what Texas A&M has in front of them, they do play at Notre Dame. They play Florida, at LSU, South Carolina, and at Texas. I think a 9-3 A&M, which means they beat one of the likes of Notre Dame, Florida, LSU, South Carolina, Texas, or 2 of those 5, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. And then doesn't stub their toe against the likes of UTSA, Utah State, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Auburn, etc. I'll take the Aggies to make the college football playoff. And I don't feel good about it, but I can see that path and don't think it's so ridiculous to follow a somewhat similar path to Tennessee followed last year. I have Ohio State as the number 3 seed. I told you last night I thought that they would win the Big Ten and that they would beat Penn State doing it. I think that Ohio State loses to Texas in the opening weekend, rattles off 12 straight wins, is 12-1 with wins over Penn State, with wins over Michigan, wins over Illinois, and has just the 1 loss to Texas. So I have Ohio State as the 3 seed. They would play the winner in this bracket of Arizona State and Penn State. I think there's a decent chance Arizona State is somewhat better in 2025 than they were last year without Cam Scatterbo. But they fall to Iowa State in a conference championship game, but not fall far enough to drop out of the college football playoff. So I have Arizona State as the 11 seed playing the 6 seed Penn State. I think Penn State loses twice in 2025, both to Ohio State. I think it's hard to argue any other way that they somehow exercise the demon twice and beat Ohio State twice. Doesn't feel super likely to me. So Penn State is in the 6th spot. I also have Alabama in the 4th spot. And I mentioned this when we talked about the conference championship games, predicting the SEC. I think Alabama's road to hoe is a little easier than the likes of Georgia, who I had playing as the 7 seed, who is probably going to win 10 games, might win 11 games, but I don't know that their SEC record is going to be better than Alabama's. And Alabama has a significantly easier road to Atlanta than, for instance, LSU. LSU, and this isn't just about the road to Atlanta, this is the road to the college football playoff. LSU plays at Clemson to open the season. I don't think it's unreasonable to think they lose that game. Then they play Florida. Then they play Ole Miss, South Carolina, Texas A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma. LSU's road to the college football playoff and to Atlanta to make the SEC championship game is more difficult than Alabama's. For instance, LSU's premier non-conference game at Clemson. Alabama is at Florida State. Florida State should be significantly better this year. They're not going to be the level of Clemson. Alabama also plays Wisconsin at home. 3 of their first 4 games, Florida State, Wisconsin, Georgia. But after that, they play Vanderbilt, Missouri, Eastern Illinois. It's not as murderous of a row for Alabama as it is for LSU. And for LSU, I think that the Tigers are talented enough to have a college football playoff roster. I think the Tigers might be talented enough to have a first-round bye in a college football playoff. But what they have to accomplish by beating Clemson, Florida, Ole Miss, South Carolina, A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma, it's tougher. The chances that they stub their toe 3 or 4 times against that schedule compared to what Alabama or Georgia does, I just don't think is as easily attainable. And so for Georgia, I have them as a 7 seed because they have to play a somewhat difficult schedule too. They play Georgia Tech, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. I'll take Georgia to lose 2 games, but still be the 7 seed. I think Alabama is the 4 seed. They get the first round bye just kind of by proxy of being in the SEC championship game and having straight seeding now rather than the conference champions getting, for lack of a better term, preferential treatment in the college football playoff. Alabama, in my bracket, will play the winner of Notre Dame at the number 5 seed. I think that it's really, really, really likely that Notre Dame is at worst 11-1 because they play Texas A&M at home. They have a somewhat difficult game against Boise State. And then after that, they play at Miami, by the way, to open the season. I think that they win that game. Miami, Texas A&M, even if they're 1-1 after that first 2-game stretch to start the season, there's not a lot of schools on here on their schedule that make you think, oh, you got to look out. Like Syracuse, after they play A&M, is the potentially toughest game on their schedule. If you throw in Boise State, I think Navy's going to be pretty good. USC should be better, but not to Notre Dame's level. The Irish don't have a ton to worry about after the first 2 weeks of the season. So as long as they don't start the year 0-2, there's a real decent chance that Notre Dame can kind of cakewalk to the college football playoff. But I think that they're going to get that strength of schedule somewhat held against them, which is why they're not going to get the first round bye. And then I forgot to put them on the bracket, but Liberty. I told you I think Liberty goes 13-0, undefeated. It's a bad schedule. They have a new quarterback that is familiar with Jamie Chadwell. Ethan Vasco is transferring over from Coastal Carolina to play at Liberty. The schedule is super easy. Not only does Liberty play at FCS school, they play 2 schools in Delaware and Missouri State. Now, that's just a byproduct of them joining the Conference USA. But they play one FCS school and two former FCS schools that are in their first year in FBS. That's a really easy schedule. They have to worry about a game on their schedule. And I know that that's oversimplification. It's incredibly short-sighted, but it is also the truth in that Liberty has a really difficult non-conference game against James Madison at home. The winner of that game could easily determine who makes the college football playoff, and I find it incredibly fascinating that it's going to happen on September 20th. But I have Liberty in the 12 spot, and I don't feel great about that one either. I don't know that I think that it's just overly simple for Liberty to make the college football playoff, because it almost feels as if even if they go 13-0, because their schedule is so bad, that every other group of 5 school has to have 2 losses. Because if Navy is 11-1, and by the way, selection day is before they would play Army. If Navy is 11-1, or I guess 10-1 in this case, Navy's 10-1 and Liberty's 13-0, who they taking? Probably Navy. So by saying Liberty at 13-0, they have to go undefeated, and everybody else would have to have 2 losses, including Boise State, including Navy, including Memphis. That's probably a tall task, but you know what? I don't think anybody thought Boise State was going to be the number 3 seed last year. I don't think anybody thought SMU, Indiana, Arizona State were going to be in the field. So I've predicted some, I guess, quote-unquote wild cards with Liberty, Texas A&M, Iowa State. Crazy things happen. But I want to hear what you think those crazy things are. Who is making your college football playoff bracket that nobody's talking about? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. Tomorrow, we'll chat Heisman Trophy winners, national champions. Look forward to seeing you then on the Daily Huddle.